That's 0.0017163. What does that tell you, math majors? What percentage did Kennedy win by in the popular vote? 1/1000th of a percent, is that right? What is it? Well, don't you take your decimal two places? If I won by, wasn't this be 5? Would this be 5%?
Yeah, so it's gonna be 0.1.
Yeah, 0.117.
There?
Yeah.
What is that? Is that a very big percentage?
0.17%.
That's not 17%, is it?
0.17%.
Thank you. Yes. That's a very close margin. I mean, incredibly close. Okay? I mean, that is just brutally close in a presidential election. Okay? Now, we did have an election in what year in which Al Gore actually had more votes than George W. Bush. Okay, remember that election? 2000? They had the big problem in Florida. Remember they had to recount the votes? But actually, Gore had more popular. Does that seem right that if you get more popular votes that you lose the presidency? That's how it works in our country. I mean, it's up to you. That's how it works. Well, anyway, in this particular election, the electoral vote is what counts. And you needed 269. That's what the candidate needed, was 269 to get 2/3 majority of the electoral votes to be elected president. That was the target, 269. When the smoke cleared, Kennedy received 303 electoral votes, Nixon 219 of the possible 537. Okay? Of the possible 537 votes, Kennedy received 303, Nixon 219. How many, what's that add up to? How many are we short? What's 303 and 219? 5 what? And how many are we short? 15?
Yeah.
Well, that's because we had an independent candidate in this election as well. Threw his name in the ring, which we didn't mention. It was a senator from Virginia that I mentioned in the reading, Harry F. Byrd. And he actually received 15 electoral votes in this election. What was the significance of Harry F. Byrd, senator, than that reading I gave you? He was from Virginia. Anybody remember that? Was he one of those guys that told the Democratic Party that if Kennedy supported Martin Luther King or Martin Luther King Jr. that he would vote the other way? Was he one of the ones that was trying to oppress blacks? Was he in the article there? Anybody find him in the article? Anybody see him in there? Anybody see Senator Harry F. Byrd in the article? Read it. Who sees it? Okay, shh, read it. Who's got it? Mauricio? What's that?
Republicans were some of the strongest civil rights champions in Congress with Democratic powers like Russell of Georgia, Byrd of Virginia, and Eastland of Mississippi were the latest in the century-long line of Democrats determined to keep blacks in the state or near bondage.
Yeah. He was one of 3 that wanted no civil rights for blacks. And he was a Democrat, and he didn't like the fact that Kennedy was so civil rights friendly at the time, so he broke off and ran on his own and did receive 15 votes. Where do you think he got them?
Alabama.
What?
Alabama.
No? Where's he from? Virginia. Okay. All right. Now with this victory, John Kennedy becomes 3 things. What's he become? President of the United States. What else does he become? Youngest president ever elected. And what else does he become? Hail Mary, full of grace. Becomes the first Roman Catholic to become president. So at Kennedy's election in 1960, he becomes obviously the president of the United States, but he also becomes the youngest man ever elected president and the only man of the Roman Catholic religion. Anybody know who the youngest man ever to serve as president was? He served after a political assassination of a president. William McKinley was assassinated. He took over because he was vice president. He was younger than Kennedy, but he was not elected. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt. Okay, any questions on that? Now, how many of you in here knew that there was an additional assassination attempt on President Kennedy prior to the one in Dallas? That wasn't an attempt, that was a success. How many people in here knew somebody tried to assassinate President Kennedy prior to that? Okay, that's what I'm going to tell you about today. An assassination attempt failed. He wasn't even president when this occurred. You know what he was? What's the term when you're elected president but you haven't taken office? Yeah, you're the president-elect, right? So, on Sunday morning, December 11th, 1960, on Sunday morning, December 11th, 1960, when is a president inaugurated into office after they're elected in November? January of the next year, in this case 61. So they have a little bit of a time that they are preparing themselves for the presidency. The president that's going out often gets a status called lame duck status because they are knowing they're out, and usually they don't do much from the time the election occurs until they are out of office with the inauguration of a new president. Some will pardon people, which we'll talk about later. Well, Kennedy was actually at the family's oceanfront Palm Beach home in Florida. They had several different places they owned. And on this particular date of Sunday morning, December 11th, 1960, President-elect Kennedy was at the family's oceanfront Palm Beach home in Florida. He was doing two things there. What was he doing there? Think about it. What was he doing? The obvious thing. She's right. Working on his tan. But he was also writing what? His inaugural address that he would be giving in about a month or so. So, Kennedy had been in Palm Beach relaxing, as Taylor said, working on his tan. He was also preparing his inaugural address. And that morning, what do you think he got up to do? Sunday morning. He went to Mass. He's getting ready to go to Mass at St. Edward Catholic Church in Palm Beach. Okay, so Kennedy got up, and he was actually going to go himself. Mrs. Kennedy and Caroline, because John Kennedy wasn't born yet, was going to go to church on his own. So, the morning of December 11th, he's getting ready to go to church at St. Edward Catholic Church in Palm Beach. He headed to the front door of the home where the Secret Service is waiting for him to drive him the short distance to the church. That makes sense? He's the president-elect. Is he going to get Secret Service protection? Did he get Secret Service protection when he was running for president? No. You know when that came about? After Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. After Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, then the Secret Service was assigned to protect all presidential candidates. You know. Well, parked down the street from the Kennedy home, sitting in a 1950 Buick automobile, was Richard Pavlik. Sitting behind the wheel, looking down the street, watching Kennedy's every move. So as Kennedy comes out the front door of their Palm Beach house to get in the car that the Secret Service are going to take him to church in, down the street, parked inside the street, was a 1950 Buick with a fellow by the name of Richard Pavlik sitting behind the wheel. Pavlik was 73 years old, retired postal worker. I don't know what it is with these postal workers, but we have troubles with them sometimes. 73-year-old retired postal worker. He was holding a switch in his hand that was wired to 7 sticks of dynamite. So, Richard Pavlik is sitting in a 1950 Buick, behind the wheel, 73-year-old retired postal worker, and he was holding a switch in his hand that was wired to 7 sticks of dynamite. And Pavlik was one of the first stalkers before we knew what stalking was all about. He had stalked Kennedy all across the country. He hated the Catholic Church, and he hated Joe Kennedy Sr. And he thought that Joe Kennedy Sr. had basically stolen the presidential election for his son, which we'll talk about later. So Pavlik had been stalking Kennedy during the campaign, waiting for his chance. He was driven by a hatred of the Catholic Church. He did not care at all for Joseph Kennedy Sr., and he was convinced that Joseph Kennedy Sr. had stolen the election for his son, which he might have, especially in, remember that reading? Where? Illinois. We'll talk about that later. So he just sat there waiting for him. What do you think he was going to do? What was in his mind? What was he going to do here? He's going to drive that car right down that street, and he's going to ram that car into the presidential elect's vehicle with the Secret Service, push the switch and blow himself and everybody else in the car up. That was his plan. Secret Service had no idea he was there. He had a clear, unimpeded path to Kennedy's car. Just no issue at all. Well, just as Kennedy is about to get in the car, what happens? What? Say it. Good guess. Another one? What happens as he's starting to get into the car, going to church by himself? Jackie came to the door of the automobile, brought 3-year-old Caroline to see her husband off. So just as Kennedy was about to leave and get in the car, Jackie came out of the door of the Palm Beach home with their 3-year-old daughter Caroline to see her husband off. Luckily for John F. Kennedy, it turned out that Pavlik was very willing to kill himself. He was very willing to kill the president-elect, and he was very willing to kill any Secret Service agent or agents that were in his way. But what was he not willing to do? Kill Jackie or the little girl. So he didn't do what he planned and looked for another opportunity. Okay? So it turned out that Pavlik was very willing to kill himself, the president-elect, and many Secret Service agents have put themselves in harm's way, but he was not willing to add Mrs. Kennedy or Caroline to the mix. So he decided not to do that, and he waited for another opportunity. Well, somehow word got out to the Secret Service that this crazy bastard was following the president-elect around, and 4 days after this, they arrested him. So he never got another chance. So the word got out that this guy, Pavlik, was kind of stalking the president. He got word. They found him and arrested him 4 days later. And the president-elect was safe. Now, according to the Secret Service, after Pavlik was arrested, they said that he had enough dynamite in that car that morning to, quote, level a mountain. So he might have got those other people anyway. Who knows? But just think about that. There's another real small bit of evidence that could have kept us from having John Kennedy as president. And who knows what happens in these crises, like we're talking about, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Okay? Any questions? How many people knew that? Anybody? So you learned something today. You learned that the president-elect almost lost his life before he ever became president. Okay. Nice job. Tomorrow.